and welcome to Mad Old Goes Racing, and today we're taking a look at the latest update for Automobilista 2, which is the 1.1.4.0. And I'll go through the changelog and then I'll read you a bit of a blurb and give you some other suitable blurb that I've been reading on the wiki pages of various things. Starting off with content, added the infamous, or should I be famous, Brabham BT46B, otherwise known as the fan car, to the Formula Retro Gen 2 class. General added new max available setting to the custom event opponents screen to limit number of AI opponents according to the number of liveries in the selected car or class. So basically that will stop you getting lots of duplicates. So if there's only 8 liveries, you'll only get 8 opponents, 1 for each livery. Excluded player livery from AI selection when enough liveries are available to not have duplicates. Added support to disable pit stop refueling for series that don't allow it. UI and HUD. Added extended vehicle information to loading screen. Fixed selected state opacity on various start buttons. Extended pause menu and added full size photo and replay buttons. And I've scrolled up too far. Added scrolling to long help texts in vehicle setup screen. Fixed gear tacho gear indicator, not changing colour at redline. Merged rearranged car info widget into a single element. Adjusted colours opacity of some car info elements to improve legibility. Fixed pit stroke formation speed limit and cooldown lap notice not labelled by default in some modes. Fixed oversized container on relative times widget. Fixed inability to enable relative times widget in light mode HUD editor. Restyled custom event session selection. Fixed menu stroke weather input registration on practice stroke qualifying session setups. Restyled HUD pit board. Fixed start new championship list always displaying selected state. Fixed help text alignment on session settings and custom event opponents pages. Fixed opponent number type option not persisting across opponents dialog launchers. Enabled localization for loading screen tips. Physics and AI. Revised unsprung mass values, spindles and wheels for all cars to correct minor discrepancies. Minor tyre tread adjustment for Formula Retro and Formula Vintage. Disabled pit stop refueling in Formula Racer and Formula Ultimate. Adjusted default coast differential ramp angles in Formula Retro's MRX and Camaro SS. Minor Formula Retro Gen 1 Gen 2 aero revisions. Added longer final gear ratio for Formula Retro cars, all models. Sigma P1, increased default preload, increased default final gear ratio. Formula Classic, increased minimum front ride height. Porsche GT3R, reduced minimum rear ride height. Formula Retro, revised suspension rates. Reduced gearbox wear in sequential and semi-auto gearboxes. Reduced 1970s Cosworth DFE RPM critical range for engine lifetime. Added blown diffuser emulation to Formula Racer. Adjusted front wing max height for Formula Retro's Formula V10 Gen 1. Adjusted critical RPM range for engine lifetime in GT1, GT3, GT4 cars. GT5 AI calibration pass. AI calibration pass for Ginetta G40 Cup. GT5, Formula Retro Gen 1, Gen 2, Mini UK and Stock Car 2021. Minor adjustments to AI awareness versus the player car. Tracks added initial logic for loading trackside crowd objects according to session type. Where was I? Tracks. I'll start again here and I can always edit it. Added initial logic for loading trackside crowd stroke objects according to season type. Initial implementation covers only 2D crowd, which now does not show in test days stroke practice sessions. Spielberg historic increased supported grid size to 20, fixed crowds season, summer to spring. Londrina long stroke short, update curve mapping to support new colours. Texture performance pass reduced draw calls 15%. Reworked sponsor adverts on temp stands. Joinia performance pass reduced draw calls by 40%. Interlagos GP stroke cart performance pass reduced draw calls 30%. New pit lane path for GP layout. Jagapagua historic. Fixed broken normals on mountain tree line. Additional performance tweaks, draw called stroke chunk size. Fixed podium lod popping. Deleted cones in middle of the road in oval layout and adjusted pit lane path exit to minimise chances of AI crashing. Hockenheim historics. Conform render to reduce road noise. Performance pass reduced draw calls by 35%. Improved live grass texture. Stop beeping at me. Imola 1988 performance pass reduced draw calls by 28%. Fix a few minor LOD object popping. Added missing start lights. Cascavel minor advert tweaks. Added VR cams for Alton Park, Goinia, Velocitor and Velo Park. Reduced or removed chance of fog stroke foggy rain in random weather depending on tracks. Vehicles Formula Classic fixed wheels offset in suspension animations. Added camber values to the suspension animation in the G1M1, G2M1, G2M3. Formula Racer added camber values to the suspension animation. Formula Ultimate 2019 added camber values to the suspension animation. Formula 3 F309 fixed visual artifacts in the rear suspension. Added camber values to the suspension animation. Adjusted the graphic offset. Stock Car 2021 updated liveries for Giulio Campos, Rafael Suzuki and Bruno Baptista. Added period accurate driver helmets, suits and gloves to Formula Retros, Formula Classics and Formula V12. Whip and still with generic textures. Further customization soon to come. Corrected Lotus 79 RPM shift light range. Fixed Formula Rita cockpit antenna. Brabham BT44 fixed shift warning light. Cars and trucks corrected normal map size. Now, let's go back to the very first item on that list, which was, of course, the Brabham BT46B, which, as everybody knows, is called the fan car. Now, we go here and we'll stick it on the showroom so it can go round, and hopefully it's not in fuzzy mode as it does it. Now, this is the spiel from the release notes, which I'll read sort of verbatim-ish, meaning I might paraphrase or I might not. As with the 1997 McLaren MP412 and its extra steer brake pedal released last year, Automobilista 2 version 1.1.4.0 pays tribute to another unique car in motorsports history, the Brabham BT46B, aka the fan car, made into folklore for its creative implementation of ground effects at the dawn of the new aero revolution during the late 80s. Designer Gordon Murray came up with the concept while in attempt to boost the performance of the BT46 as against the mighty Lotus 79, which had been dominating the 1978 F1 season up until then. Under the pretense of improving airflow and cooling through the drivetrain, which it actually also did, the fan of the BT46B would blow faster as the engine revved up, and as it did, it would suck the air from underneath the car, generating astronomical levels of downforce in the process. The car raced only once in the Swedish Grand Prix of 1978, which was at Anderstorp, which is now known as the Scandinavian Ring. I think that's what it's called. It's basically the same circuit now as it was then, give or take a couple of minor changes, which I might mention in a minute if I remember. And duly won it in dominating fashion at the hands of Niki Lauda. Bernie Eccleston, who owned the Brabham team and at the time was also beginning to take a leading role in the newly formed F1 Constructors Association, decided to retire the concept to avoid stirring a feud with other constructors. Contrary to the common misconception, the BT46B was never banned or deemed illegal and went into retirement with the distinct achievement of winning 100% of the races it entered. Now the Brabham BT46B has been brought back to life in Automobilista 2 to continue taking the fight to the Lotus 79 for ground effect supremacy. Well, a couple of minor points. The original BT46 was supposed to have an interesting cooling solution, which was heat exchangers rather than traditional radiators over a large surface area. And the designs were sent off to a consultant, David Cox, who looked at them and went, shit, that's never going to work, mate. And basically said they're only going to give you about 30% of what you actually need to cool the car. In the meantime, whilst he was like sort of doing all this, they actually took the car out and tested it and found out that, oh shit, the engine overheats. And that's the main reason why they added the fan system. To get round the initial problem, they actually changed the front wing and went with radiators in the front wing. So the BT46, if you look at the front wing on it, as we happen to be looking at it, it's got a nice sort of quite tall wing with air intakes on the front of it, and actually had radiators in the front wing to give it the extra cooling. But the fan on the back, one of the things, because they said the main purpose of it was actually to cool the engine, there's actually a radiator above the flat 12. This is the reason why they thought about doing other things, because being a flat 12 you couldn't have the Venturis underneath like you could on the with the V8 in the back of the Lotus, so they had to do something slightly different. And the idea was that it's sort of not only sucked the air out from underneath it, but it did actually aid the cooling of the car. So without it, it would have overheated with the stock front wing. But it is a really nice looking car. It's very clean, very simple. Pardon the big fan on the back, but it's a very nice looking car. I mean, it's got this big flat back to it, helped by the fact, obviously, flat V12. I believe the following year they came up with a V12 from Alpha for this very reason, so they could actually have a proper Venturi system. But we're going to drive it. It's flat 12, it's 6-speed, Hewland guts in the gearbox. I'm going to try Austria. I don't know how much more work is going to be needed on this to get it up to the same spec as like the Lotus. First time I tried the Lotus, I thought it felt a bit peculiar, but I tried it again earlier and I went, ooh, that's really nice now. The thing that Lauda said about it is that you have to basically drive it through the corners, because if you let the revs drop, it's dead in the water. So we'll try and drive it the way he wanted it to be driven. Horrible starter sound. I'm going to use an H pattern, which I'll probably regret because it's a 6-speed box and I'll probably miss half the gears. I'm going to have to take it a little bit easy till we get a little bit of heat in the tyres. It also doesn't help your hand gets in the way of the bloody tacho, so you can't see whether it's up to a full 10,000 plus RPM. Engine should rev to 12. Oops. Not a good gear change. Get off the grass. Get off the grass. Arsehole. Who let me drive, eh? These tyres do take 3 laps or more to get some temperature in, which is not very helpful. As you can see, it's quite easy to let the revs drop and very difficult to keep it sort of in the sweet spot. You end up in second a lot if you're not careful. It's very... I don't know whether it needs a bit of something done with the diff or whether it's just needs a bit of adjustment to the way it's doing the aero with the fan for the sort of blown exhaust style, which is, as I mentioned, for the Formula Racer, was it? It's going to have a blank... Whoops, shit. Embarrassingly shite gear change. It's a bit understeery. In fact, it's extremely understeery at the moment. The Lotus 79 is much more positive on the front end, so catch me every bloody time that corner. Don't push on the gear lever when it's I feel the back end all over the place. Wanting to go all over the place, I should say. It's getting a little bit more positivity on the front end, but that might be at higher speed. At low speed, it's decidedly wayward. Definitely a bit of understeer there. Now, if I remember correctly, for the Swedish Grand Prix, that was terrible. They actually qualified the cars with almost full tanks because they reckoned it was going to be so much quicker than everything else. And it still ended up second and third on the grid. See, I can't not drop down below 10,000 RPM there unless I go down first, and I think that's too low a gear. Oops. That was terrible. That was a horrible lap. Still pretty damn slow. Tyres are taking a hellishly long time to get some heat in them. It is quite hard work driving this. Not physically so much as just the trying to work out what to do with it. That wasn't good, that wasn't good. I believe Nicky Lauda described it as being on rails. I'm definitely not getting that vibe from it at the moment, so... Well, that's 5 laps, and now you can feel the potential. It just doesn't quite feel like it's there yet. Bit more polish. It feels a bit like how I felt about the 79 the first time I drove it. It's a little bit too loose. It definitely doesn't get the sort of planted feeling that you sort of associate with the ground effect cars. Should we? Yeah, we'll do a couple of laps in the 79 as a quick back to back. Now, obviously, I don't know how well the car set up and what specific track they had in mind when they set it up, and you have to remember. Tracks from the sort of late 70s were somewhat different animals to sort of today's tracks. I mean, you only have to take somewhere like Zolder. It was much more flowing sort of in the late 70s than it is now. Those horrible little chicanes that's got all over it were sort of nice flowing chicanes. The sort of thing I like, rather than the sort of thing that some weird bucket decided to put in for safety's sake. Well, that's a good starting point. It doesn't make that horrible chunkety noise. I think, if I'm correct, the flat 12 alpha engine in the Brabham's supposed to produce about 40 horsepower more and have a load more torque, but it's also about 40 kilos heavier, so Terrible Gear Changes presents much more positive feeling front end on this. Now the thing I forgot to check was what sort of top speed we were getting down the straight, so I'll literally have to go back and watch the video and compare the cornering speed and the top speed down the straights and see where it's actually losing out. Didn't do that very well, but whatever. Again, slight lack of slow speed grip. Still relatively cold tyres, so we'll forgive it that one for now. And oddly, I think the 5-speed gearbox helps because I don't have to change gear as often, so I can't fuck it up so much. It's almost like having to keep the damn thing above 10,000 RPM. It's just keeping my mind overly occupied with worrying about the gears. Now the BT46 had pitot tubes and all sorts of weird and wonderful dials and gauges in cockpit to help you know when the darn thing was generating decent downforce. Whether or not they arrive, they might do, they might not. Don't know how that lap time compared. Definitely a bit of a cold tyre issue, as in getting some damned heat in his. Oh, didn't want to go down a second for that. That was a good bite to the engine. The back end staying nicely planted for that, and it's got much better front end feel to it, so it just feels like it's got more grip all round than the Brabham, as I'm assuming the tyres are absolutely the same. Yep, didn't quite get that right. We'll see if we can do a reasonably clean lap. Love a braking mark around here somewhere to tell you where to bloody brake or turn in. It's like, Again, it barely feels like it's moving over that crest, whereas the Brabham was much more lively. So that's the 4th lap, and definitely a bit quicker. Definitely feels quicker. I don't know. What was the time on the other one? I can't remember. I know I only did about 5 laps earlier in the car, and it down in the low 39s, early late 38s without too many problems. And I was driving like a prat there. I wasn't driving quite as well as I was earlier. I got me this all hooked up. Yeah, I think the Brabham, once they've sorted out the sort of whatever it is that's making it feel like it's rotating too much, I think it'll be a great car. But at the moment, it needs a touch of work. It's close, and possibly on the right circuits, there will be not a lot to choose, if anything, between the 79 and the Brabham, and they do seem fairly close on them. Lap times, not a million miles apart. Like I said, I will have to check to see what I did with the Brabham, but yeah, it's lots of potential. Interesting car, obviously. I'd like to see a 6-wheel Tyrrell come and join it at some point. And a few of the other, let's say, Formula 1 oddities that turned up over the years, but a good addition, just needs a little bit of polish. But I think that'll do for now. Like I said, trying a few different circuits. It might work better on somewhere like Silverstone. I haven't tried it on many circuits. I tried it on here and I tried it on, where was it? I've forgotten where it was now, but I tried it on a couple of circuits, and it didn't feel quite as planted as the Lotus does. So it needs something. Whether it's not meant to be quite as planted, I don't know. Or maybe I'm just not any louder, and that's a fucking fact, isn't it? So, but for me, for now, have fun, enjoy your racing, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.